This season of Truly Independent is supported by the Help Them See Foundation. Help Them See is a nonprofit dedicated to supporting feature films that inspire faith, hope, and connection. By partnering with filmmakers, the Help Them See Foundation brings meaningful stories to life and shares them with audiences worldwide, making a lasting cultural impact through the power of cinema. Learn more and discover how you can be part of the movement by visiting helpthemseefoundation.org. Welcome to Season 3 of Truly Independent. I'm Garrett Batty alongside my co-host Daren Smith. Each week, we'll go in-depth with guests, industry experts, and we'll even share our own experiences, all with the goal of demystifying the independent film process. This season, it's all about the script, from the first spark of an idea to a polished final draft, breaking it down for scheduling, budgeting, and ultimately shooting. We'll walk through every step it takes to get from page to production. Welcome to Truly Independent.
Hello, man. Welcome back.
Hey, it is good to be back. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm great. We should add some context to that statement. You were out of the country last week. I think we dive into this episode and talk about your trip. What was that all about?
That's good. Yes, I was out of the country and it's good to be back. And we missed a week recording, but hopefully in real time it won't feel that way. But yes, I was in Antigua, which I just learned how to pronounce before the trip. So Eastern Caribbean, Antigua, doing a really unique project-related location scout that we can talk about. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where this episode goes, but I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yeah, I think we've got maybe two topics today that we can talk about, but one of them is, when stuff pops up, how and when and why do you say yes to those things? Because, sometimes that's what you should be doing, and other times it can be a distraction from what you should be doing. So
Yeah.
I wonder, maybe there's not so much you can say about the project yet, but maybe talk about how this came about and how you made the decision to say, like, yeah, I'm going to take some time and go do this and explore it. And if there's figuring out if there's something there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a good topic, and it's honestly been something that's been on my mind lately is when do you say yes, when do you say no? And as an independent filmmaker, how do we manage all of these projects that we have to keep simmering until one takes off? And it's this principle of momentum. And Darren, we've talked a little bit about momentum with your current project and kind of understanding when momentum is happening and when to run with that and the risks of that. So I want to talk about that. Okay, do we pursue a project that is gaining momentum at the risk of losing other projects, or how do we best manage that? This is probably, there's that filmmaker aspect, but there's also that kind of entrepreneur, just managing an independent film career rather than just gig work. So I don't know, it's messy and muddled, but hopefully we'll talk and I'll share our experiences, and listeners can learn what not to do or what to do.
Well, I think the second part of the conversation today then can be the decisions that I'm looking at making right now on Brotherhood, the project that we're on, and it really sets it up nicely. So let's start with your side, then we can end on my side maybe.
Okay, that sounds great.
But yeah, I think you've highlighted the big question, which a lot of filmmakers have, which I think is the core question for this episode is like, how do I choose? And I know we've talked about this before, but now we're in the thick of it. Like you're balancing what 2 or 3 projects on your side, but then you've got this thing that popped up. So walk us through, how did it come together and why did you make that choice?
Yeah.
Why,
Well,
Garrett?
yeah.
Why'd you do that?
Why? Yeah. Hopefully, the answer explains itself when I say I got a phone call a couple of weeks ago saying, "Would you like to go to Antigua to scout locations?" That question is yes. And then, what's the project? Yes, Darren. I've talked about different projects. I'm working on the Pearl, and we've got fundraising for Where the Dog Heals happening. We've got a script. I've already done some location scouts, and all of these films are kind of in that same stage where there's a script, there's some initial funds, there's interest. We just did a read through for the Pearl, and these projects are slow burn. I don't know. It feels like they're gaining a little momentum, like maybe 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or 2 steps forward, and then wait for a little bit. And you never know. I just never know which one is going to take off. So I got a call from a client or a friend. We have yet to do an actual project together. We've talked for years about doing a project together, and he makes tourism videos for Antigua. And he reached out and said, "Hey, I've got a client down there, a very consistent client who would like to look at doing feature films or some sort of narrative storytelling to build the film industry in Antigua. It's a small film industry that there's a lot of interest and a lot of support, and they wanted to know if there would be enough infrastructure and enough resources available to do a film." So with that, I said, "Look, that sounds fantastic. It's worth it for me to explore for a week to go down there." And so that's what we did. So it was part meetings, part location scouting. No specific project at the start of the week, but certainly some great projects by the end of the week.
Nice.
Should I
Was that
should I,
just
should
a
I go on?
function?
Should I carry on?
Well, was that just a function of you walking around and going, "Oh, I could shoot something here. This is an interesting location or interesting place, and there's an interesting feeling here." And then it just sparked your creative juices, and you're like, "Oh, what if we did something like this?" Or did they have some projects in mind, or did you have some projects in mind going in? Like, what happened?
So they did not have projects in mind. They knew of my experience of making independent films in the budget range, that $1 to $3 million budget range. When we talked, when they described what they were hoping to do, which is fund some independent films in this coming year to try to build the film industry, I felt like we were aligned on that. And I let them know. I said I do a lot of faith and family films, and they were on board with that. They said that sounds fantastic. Come on down and look at what we're doing down here. So I did feel like there was alignment. Um, so with that, in the weeks prior to leaving, I did put together several potential proposals. I had done some research in Antigua. Said, look, what are the top 10 tourist attractions? What's the history of Antigua? And I actually met with Jeremy Prusso, who's been a guest of the podcast and dear friend, and said, Jeremy, there's an opportunity here to do a story in Antigua. Do you want to start putting together a script? So Jeremy and I have been brainstorming outlines, and we had two or three outlines of a script that I was able to take down there, or various scripts and stories. Are these pirate themed? Are they treasure themed? Are we doing a rom com? And so as I got down there, we had these kind of in the back of my mind, and didn't share a ton with the potential client, but just I wanted to understand what they wanted and then be prepared to respond to that.
Yeah.
And so that was very helpful. Yes, getting there, first couple of days were location scouting at several these all-inclusive resorts and the surrounding areas, and lots of fun touristy type activities. And then we started having discussions with what the ability to bring film equipment. What film equipment exists there? Is there a rental house? Is there a G&E facility? Is there a studio? And the answers were frequently no. So it was a matter of saying, okay, what support do we have in bringing that equipment down? And so
Yeah.
we were doing, in addition to location scouting, it was like logistical scout. And as it was very much producer minded, how do we bring the equipment in that we're going to need, and what sort of accommodations can customs give us or the government? And so our contact was very responsive and very knowledgeable in those areas. And it felt like it wasn't something I could just do over Zoom. It was definitely very helpful to be there, mingling, handing everybody, and kind of establishing the interest, engaging the opportunity, and then coming up with ideas that would align with what they want to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. My wife and I were in Portugal last month for a trip, just about 10, 12 days. And the same kind of thing happened where we would be walking around an old castle or walking around these lagoons in Lagos, Portugal, and just going, man, it'd be so cool to film here. And then your brain starts going of like, oh, what could we
Yeah,
do? And how do we shape that into a story? Because there's a big difference between a couple of cool shots at a cool location and a story that justifies all of the logistics and planning and producing that it's going to take to get there. But it's fun. It happens. So that's cool that you were able to go and be there. And I think you transition nicely, not away from your story, but I can add on some of the stuff that I've been thinking over the last week or two. Of
yeah,
you talked about putting on your producer brain and going, okay, well, there's the story aspect, but then there's the how are we actually going to pull this off? And I also want to introduce the idea of like every movie I think has a pace that it wants to go at. It also has a budget that it wants to be made at. There's just like a natural sweet spot that I found. If I do a budget and it wants to be at 1.5 and we're trying to do it for 750, it's like, okay, well that's not maybe where the movie wants to be, but we're going to do it this way. So we got to make some concessions. We're going to have to trim what the movie wants to be or change or consolidate. Um, and so I love that you brought that up, that even in the location scout, even in the early phases of ideation of a story, that you're thinking about, okay, well, what does this want to be? Is this, it's probably not some $30 million thing with big A-list actors. Like, no, we want to do this on a scale that's manageable and doable because there isn't the infrastructure to do a $30 million movie there. So what I've been thinking about on this movie, and I think to answer or to maybe comment on one of the things you said of like, how do you choose which one? You've got two or three projects in motion. I think the one that has the momentum, that just like to me is a signal that like this is the one. And we've talked about it with Brotherhood. It certainly happened with the last two movies that we did together. Like, you know, you called me and 3-4 months later we were filming. You know, it was like a location scout or a recce, and then 2 months later we're in pre-production, and a month after that we're out filming. It just had that sort of pace to it. And then we came home, and Faith of Angels was interesting because it had that initial momentum. We were going to come off the plane and start filming Faith of Angels
Yeah,
from the
yeah.
Carpenter. And then it fell through, and it was like, oh, pump the brakes. Hold on. This is not what this movie wants to be. And to me, that was a budget thing of this movie deserves this type of budget, not a small budget, not one where we'd have to make a lot of sacrifices to tell the story properly. A year later, it came together. Once we found the right financial partner, it was like all steams ahead, full steam ahead.
Full steam ahead. There it is.
Mixing my
All
metaphors.
systems go.
The
Yes.
head.
All still, yeah. Yeah. Darren, you're exactly right. And that momentum is invaluable. And I think that um, as a producer, the challenge is like identifying, or a challenge is identifying that momentum, or is this momentum, or is this just self perpetuating hype? Hey, look at what, and I try to be very careful and very conscientious of not, even with them, saying, look, like it's still a challenge to make a movie. So I love that there's enthusiasm and excitement, and hey, we want to do a movie down here. And some locations we'd go to, and they're absolutely beautiful, but I had to continually question and ask myself, look, what is the value of this location, and is it worth the pain of getting here? To be quite frank, it's an absolutely beautiful place, and there were lots of amazing opportunities. And obviously, as a director, as a storyteller, those ideas start to flow. You go, oh, this is cool. This is cool. And then you start to say, okay, how do we get the crew here? And what crew is here? How big is our crew? And what is the cost of getting a crew down here to stay at these all-inclusive resorts? And that the best use of the funds? And so if you just have to start to balance out things and say, look, I know there's excitement. That's good. But that excitement is going to die real quick once, the first problem comes up. And so you have to say, okay, is there momentum enough to get us beyond these problems, or to solve these problems, or to plow through them, or roll over these problems? And if the answer is yes, then great. And I think we found that with Faith of Angels. That first excitement was, we're going to make a movie. This is great. The potential funder was so excited to make a movie. But then when the challenge of, now we got to make a movie, now you got to write the check.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, wait a second. So
yeah, that's why I like to put those two moments as close together as possible. Oh, you have the excitement, send the money now. Just give it. No buyer's remorse. But yeah, it's very different to be there at an all-inclusive resort, eating good food all day long and taking your time and exploring and vacationing almost. It's more of a vacation vibe than being on set working 10, 12 hours a day, getting up early, going to bed late, too tired to explore and see and really take it all in. So those are different experiences that, yeah, we don't want to go in thinking it's just going to be like a vacation for a month. It's like, no, it's work. You're still going to be making a movie. Yeah.
So you'll be making a movie, and as a producer, you're bringing in crew, and you have to say, look, am I really going to be able to pull this off? If I'm going to bring in professional crew, or even friends that you've worked with 1,000 times before, at the end of the day, you still have to go away from that island or that location, whatever it is, with a film in the can. And to say, hey, we're going to spend 3 weeks shooting in an all inclusive resort is going to be the time of our life. They say, you know what? Okay, we're going to be away from our family. Have to essentially shut down sections of this all inclusive resort for extended periods of time. Are they going to allow that? What are the challenges that are going to accompany telling this story in this beautiful location?
Yeah.
And if those outweigh if the challenges outweigh the payoffs, then that's a project that maybe gets gets pushed to the back burner.
Yeah. Very true. I
And
also
the good
want to,
news is that was not the case with this one. This one felt
that's good.
very, yeah. So I keep
That was good.
talking you through it.
I love it. I mean, that's what we wanted to talk about was like, that's a cool experience that came because you have this career, because you're known as the guy for this type of thing. And so, yeah, those are the things that you go, okay, well, everything I've done up to this point has made it possible for an opportunity like this to come to me. And so that's something that we should recognize and be grateful for and go, okay, well, I should at least consider this instead of just being like, no, that's not what I want to do next. It's like, well, man, that's an opportunity that doesn't come every day to every filmmaker. You know, it's a very special, unique kind of request to come out and be considered for that.
I was very grateful for that. Yeah, very excited for that opportunity, and yeah, I wanted to make sure that they knew, hey, am I even the right guy? Am I the guy that you want? These are the types of movies that I make, the family friendly, faith genre or family comedy, whatever it is. And if you're building a film industry, there are a million different ways to make a movie, a million different stories out there. Am I the guy you want? And very well. They we in addition to scouring the locations and going to different islands and just seeing all of the potential out there, we did get a chance to talk about different stories that would work for them. So I went down with two or three ideas. While there, we came up with two or three more. And so now it's a matter of engaging what they want. And essentially, this is a project for a client. I'm not coming to them pitching a movie with funding, saying they want to make sure that this represents Antigua well, and represent and is a kickoff to what they want to do. And so, understanding that, we're able to put together some really fun project ideas. That now it's a matter of saying, okay, now we're going to put together a budget and proposal and send it out there. And those are the problems, and I'm air quoting problems, that he's going to look at. And if his excitement is greater than the problems, then we'll probably be making a movie out there.
Yeah, there you go. Amazing. So I also wanted to comment on this idea of like your capacity or your bandwidth as a filmmaker and how do you balance that? Because you talked about the projects you already have kind of in the works with the Pearl and Where the Dog Heals, and then you've got these new things. And so, and I'm sure every week you're getting opportunities coming into your inbox going, hey, do you want to direct this? Do you want to produce this? Do you want to finance this? Do you want to co-produce this? So how do you do it? How do you figure out what projects to do based on your capacity? And I think it's important for us to highlight that there's a difference between you and I because we have different capacity, right? I can do multiple projects a year as a producer. And I'll even talk about why the fund structure is structured the way it is to allow me to do multiple movies a year. But if you are a director, your capacity is much lower, meaning the number of projects you can do in a given time frame is lower. If you're a crew member, you can go, and if you're basically engaged from day one of production to day 20 or whatever of production, then you can do whatever 10 movies a year for 20
Yeah,
days each, right? And that's a lot of capacity, which means you also need more people that can hire you in a year. If you only have one director that likes you enough to hire you or trusts you enough to hire you or wants to work with you, a director's capacity is very different. Trying to do 2 movies in a year would be insane. Like 1 a year is probably really fast. 2 a year is more like really good capacity. You've got time to develop it and get the financing in place and then do your development and, start hiring your crew and having time to work through it and a really long pre-production. Then you got a few months of production and then you got post for a few months. Then you're releasing the movie. I mean, that's Faith of Angels was a year and a half, of that. So, and that was kind of single focus for you. I know you had to kind of do other things as well, but for the most part, you weren't working on 2 movies at a time. You were working on one for that 18 months, if I'm not mistaken. And so you have to think of it in the reality of, okay, what's my actual capacity or bandwidth based on my role? And one of the reasons I structured Producer Fund the way that I have done it is so that I can get out of the day-to-day responsibility of being on set, being responsible for signing checks and making decisions when things break or whatever, solving problems, and staying high level so that I can be working on 3 movies at a time. I can have one in development, one in production, one in marketing and distribution,
Yeah.
and I can inform and I can be a part of at high level with all those things. But the way I've structured it, and this is the decision that I've been faced with over the last couple of weeks, is how am I going to produce these movies in order to allow me to stay high level? I'll pause there for a second, but I got more.
I think, Darren, I think you bring up a great point, and I think that I try to look at. There's two things I look at. One is ownership, and do I own these projects? Then your role is not director. Your role is like owner, and
Hmm.
that's all of the above. For the Antigua projects, I've told them even when they brought it up. I said, "Look, I see this as a work for hire project. So here's an idea. If you're hiring me to come up with ideas that we could do, here's 3 or 4 ideas, and here's the invoice for that, for the trip or whatever. Right?
Yeah.
If you're hiring me to direct, then hire me to direct, and that's basically a standard deal. If it's a 4 week shoot, then there's 6 weeks prep, 9 weeks post, and 4 weeks shooting, and that's it. And that's what I have to allow I have to limit my involvement to the role. So when you're talking about months and months of development and pre-production, that's producer.
Yeah.
And if they're not hiring me to produce, then I don't do that. So it would allow me to do those 3 movies in a year as a director. Um, the other thing that I have to say is if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? Because you're right, we have to recognize our bandwidth, and to not do that would be to, I guess, probably it wouldn't give the projects their due. It would not give the projects the attention that they deserve if you ignore your bandwidth.
Yeah.
Now
So
that's
part,
flexible. Sometimes you can stretch, push yourself, and hey, work 2 jobs. We've all done it. But yes, I principally I have to say, what am I saying no to when I say yes to this project? And I
yeah.
have to be very transparent with the client. And they said, hey, would you consider coming down and 3 or 4 weeks and we just work through stuff like this together? And based on the budget and those early discussions, I didn't necessarily see the value in doing that. I don't think that's the best thing for the project. And so I let them know. I said, look, I'm not that at that stage in my career where I can just drop everything and hang out here for a month.
Yeah.
And I don't think that would be the best thing for the project, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll do the pitch, send it to the client, they'll choose which project, and then it'll be a work for hire thing.
That's awesome. And it's great that you kind of had those boundaries or those bumpers in place to be able to say, no, here's the constraints that I'm willing to work in. And I'm not willing to say no to these other things in order to accommodate that. And I think what that highlights is that you've got a goal for where you want your career to be in a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and where this plays in helping those dominoes fall over the next couple of years. Like, you don't want it to be a detour. You don't want it to detract or distract from the work that you're already doing to say, no, I've got this foundation, I got these kind of movies, and I'm already lining this stuff up. This has to fit into that.
Yes.
I'm not going to abandon what I'm building in order to come and do this for the opportunity that it is right now. Maybe if it were some different type of opportunity, there's a different consideration there.
Can't abandon. I
Yeah.
mean, the priority is the
Yeah.
Helms MC Foundation is a donation-driven fund that is going to allow me to produce and direct multiple movies a year for the next 10 years. Yeah, and you're right, Darren. If this doesn't fall into that, then I need to say no to them more than I do the foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, very similar consideration over the last few weeks. My big question was, do I hire or find a production company, or do I build the team myself and produce it through Craftsman Films, which is, a producing entity. It's more of a financing entity. Like, Producer Fund is the financing vehicle to
Yeah.
fund movies that Craftsman Films will produce. But I don't have, a team of a dozen people that are working for me on all the projects that I do. I don't have I'm at my house. I don't have a production office or a studio or any sort of office space. I don't have people on payroll. And so the idea of, okay, if I'm going to build a team every single time, that's a lot more commitment and a lot more work on my part than maybe I should be doing. But on this project specifically, the timeline is so it's not rushed. We have 6 months that we devoted to development. We're going to film in like April, May of next year. And we really greenlit the movie like November 1st. So you have November, December, January, February, March,
Okay.
April. That's 6 months, right?
Yeah.
So that's a lot of time with money to be able to say we're developing this thing and hiring all of our people. But as Ross was just go talking to very specific people that he wanted to hire for like the key creative roles, the production designer, the cinematographer, choreographer, costume designer, those conversations started in November. And by the end of November, we had all of them getting offers. So I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. Like we've basically built out the creative team. So then what's left is kind of your producing team and all of like the, your G&E team and your locations and your transpo and your production team. And I was like, well, I spent some time in November talking to production companies. I talked with one in New York. I talked to one here in Utah to say, look, I would like the dream scenario is for me to write you one check and say, go make the movie and then come back with the finished movie. And I don't want to hire people. I don't want to set up anything. I don't want to run payroll. Like I want you to do all of that. And the Utah company was too busy around that time, so they passed. I'm still waiting to hear on the New York company. We'll see what they say, but I wasn't pausing my work to wait for an answer for them. We just kept going. And so last week, now that we're into December, I start having conversations with local line producer UPMs that have done musicals before and first ADs and I'm going, okay, by the time I hear back from this New York production company, I'm going to have the whole team built. Then what are they for? So
Yeah. Yeah.
it kind of answered itself. But that was the question that I was confronting over the last 3 or 4 weeks was like, what's the right path to produce this movie that allows me to stay high level and manage people's money as someone who runs a fund? Because like I've said before, I think on this show, if you're raising money from people, from investors, if you're the person doing that, your number one responsibility is to get a return for your investors, to get them their
Yeah.
money back with interest. And how lucky we are that we get to do that by making a movie. And the movie is the vehicle that helps us get the main goal, which is getting our investors a return. Why is that the main goal? Because you want them to be happy. You want them to tell all their friends that they had a really good experience. And then we create more film investors, which means we get to make more movies. So it's all very self serving, but you have to make sure that
Oh,
you get your investors what they want so that you can do what you want, which is make movies. So that's kind of how I've been going through the last few weeks of like this stress. I mean, I've literally been up at night thinking about who else should I be talking to production company wise and who else is out there. And does it make sense to bring an out of state company because that limits the amount of in-state spend with our tax incentive? Like all those things are playing on repeat in my brain at 2 a.m. I mean, like we were saying earlier, every project has a pace that it wants to go at. And I didn't
yeah.
want to slow down the pace to say, well, wait, we don't have a production company yet. So we just kept going and I just kept talking and talking to people. And I think that's one of the things as a producer you have to be conscious of. What's the network
Mm.
you have? What leverage do you have? What are you bringing to the table? And you go and you go and you go and keep your options open, but you just keep going. And then I think the path kind of reveals itself as you go. At least that's my experience on this one so far.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be scary, Darren, because you have to think, look, the investor is investing. I know they're investing in the fund, but ultimately they're investing in the movie and in you and your ability to get it done. So that's what you're deliberating is like, how do I make sure that I don't impede my ability to get this movie done and still do other movies, like still focus on the fun, not get distracted. And so they're trusting that you will make those decisions for the best interest of the movie, which it sounds like you're navigating carefully.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I think I was sending an email off to a potential investor this morning who was asking a bunch of kind of due diligence questions about previous films and the films in the slate and stuff. And I ended the email with, look, this is not one of those check the boxes type things. Like, if you're looking for a quote unquote name actor that has great appeal and bankability internationally and those kind of things, like, that's not what this is. What you're really betting on is that I'm a good manager of uncertainty, that you've got a
Mm.
good person at the helm of this thing to say, when something doesn't go the way it was planned, or when we're confronted with an opportunity to do something different, I'm going to make a decision that benefits the investors and the projects. And that's a unique place that I've put myself in. And that's what you're really betting on. You're betting on me as a producer and someone managing a fund and making investment decisions on your behalf in this space. But that's what it is. It's not a show me the check boxes and how many of you checked. And if you check enough, then I'll write you a check.
Yeah, those conversations happen, but truly independent really isn't about making those types of movies. We're not doing the. That's why they're independent. That's why people are saying no to them. But we're going to figure out a way to make them.
Yes, we're doing it without you, whether you like it or not. Whether we
Yeah.
like it or not, maybe. But yeah, it's been a fun process, and for the sake of documenting the process on the show, by January, mid January, I will have a final decision. I hope to hear back from the company in New York. The reason why I'm still kind of leaving that door open is because they have a really great relationship with a distributor. So, I mean, I don't need to talk about who the production company is, but they have a relationship with Amazon MGM. And so that's a very different path for distribution to say, oh, if I can bring in a production partner, even if they're just like a producer in name only, and they say, look, I'm gonna be a producer and collect a little fee in order to make smooth the path or grease the runway for this conversation with Amazon MGM, maybe that's worth it, because that's a very different distribution strategy than self-releasing, hiring a distributor to put us in a couple hundred screens with no marketing budget. And so that's why I'm leaving that lane open still. And I'm not really looking at any other production companies to say, oh, who else is out there? Because if they don't have that sort of relationship, well, I've already built the whole production company. I don't need their help anymore. And I don't want to pay a fee just for them to like be on the project when I've already done a lot of the heavy lifting. So that's where I'm at. By 3-4 episodes from now, we'll have a final update of like, if we want to follow up on it, like, yes, we're doing it this way. Here's who we're working with. I should have some distribution a little bit more dialed in. I'm in those conversations now and have 3 more conversations with distributors this week. And so it's a lot of just getting it set up because I don't have a production company with a relationship yet. And so you build it yourself. You go truly independent. You just make it happen.
Yeah. I love it, Darren. And it's my brain starts to go down the whole distributor road and what are the costs of distribution? What are the opportunity costs? I say, oh, I have a New York based production company that has a relationship with a distributor. And just asking, what do you really want out of that? Is it the relationship with the distributor? And is there a way to secure that without a production company who's perhaps based on, I'd be curious, and not that we have to solve problems or debate on the episode, but I'd be curious about the value that a New York based production company is bringing other than the relationship with a distributor, and if that really offsets the cost of doing it through them.
Yeah. The way
But
that I've done that mental math is to say, yeah, we're losing out on whatever they're bringing to the table. Maybe they have in-house producer, line producer, UPM, production coordinator, et cetera, right? A production accountant. I think you'd want some of those roles to be local, your UPM, your production coordinator. You want local people because they have the relationships and know the vendors and know the crew and stuff. So there's maybe a handful of people that they would bring or some infrastructure that they could bring to the table. But they're also going to have a production fee that's associated with it. There may be 1 or 2 owners of the company that are going to want producer or executive producer credits. So you got to be willing to give those and maybe a share of the returns. But if they have relationship with a distributor that can bring $5 million of marketing to the table, that's to me a no-brainer. That's like, oh, okay. Well, then we should definitely have that conversation. And you can structure in your deals like, oh, it's contingent on this. We have to have those conversations and have a distribution deal in place in order for us to hire you as a production company, or however you want to structure it with your legal team, to say, look, I'm not hiring you and adding expense and removing in-state spend for no reason. It's for this relationship. So if you can't deliver the relationship, there's no partnership here. But that's
Yeah,
how
the
I'm
relationship
thinking about
and
it.
the performance, like because you
Yeah.
need the performance, right?
Yeah.
Because the distributor's gonna have casting caveats and things like that. That it sounds like you're already making those deals. Ooh, I'm glad that your brain figures that stuff out. I started
Like
a whole
that's
question.
a whole different conversation on casting that we could probably have. But I do think that you have to say as a producer, this is the movie we're making. And if you like it, great, we can talk. And if it's not for you, then also great. Like we're not making the calculated movie of how do we get 10,000 extra dollars from this territory in international sales 2 years from now?
Yeah,
Because 2 years
yeah,
from now, the list of bankable talent is going to be completely different. So I
right.
don't play that game. And I've told 3 separate distributors now, we're not playing that game. And they said, great, we can't work together. I said, okay, thanks for letting me know. Because that's not the game we're playing. That's not the movie we're making. And
Yeah,
it's like, okay. They go, okay, great, good luck. And I say, great, thanks for the call. And, we're friends and it's fine. But
yeah, yeah,
everybody has the market. Everyone has a place in the market that they've carved out. And it's really hard to get people to budge from that. And so if you're talking to an international sales agent or a distributor and saying, look, there's potential to come in on some financing or some marketing distribution fees or whatever, we can have that conversation. But as soon as they go, well, tell me about your talent, I'm like, yep, we're in different lanes. This is not going to work out in your favor. So let's just pause there and say, thanks for the call. We'll talk next time.
that's a yeah, it's a tricky spot. That's like a
That is why. Cool, man. I'm excited to hear if a project comes from that. I'm excited to hear how you guys pick it up in the new year because I think everything shuts down basically from here on out. Like after this week, we're recording this on the 15th.
yeah,
In my calendar reflects that like last week, first week of December, and this week were packed. Like everybody's trying to get end of the year deals and business and conversations happening, but nobody's meeting from the 20th on. Like
yeah,
that's just you're done. Like don't even try to reach out to people. So I've done all of my like email blasts and here's how to contact me and let's set up a call, and tomorrow and Wednesday are like 10 calls both days, just stacked.
yeah,
But Thursday, Friday, nothing. Next week, nothing. So
yeah.
I'm excited to take some time off and to be
Take some
able
time
to,
off. Tune in next week for the annual review, the reminiscent.
yeah, there you go.
I don't know. Let's talk about I don't know the best movies we've seen this year or something.
I love it. And biggest
Um,
lessons learned in what we've been trying to do this year. Yeah.
and not to belabor the point, but I do want to do an episode or at least have a conversation about maintaining momentum and just saying, look, that how do we yes, the Antigua project or the Faith of Angels, excuse me, the Where the Dog Heals or the Pearl or even Brotherhood. And unless you have a guy like Ross that is just eat, sleep, and drink movie making, how do
Yeah.
you as a producer maintain that momentum so that it because you got a year's worth of production and project that you have to do and problems to solve. So another discussion, teaser for another episode.
Yep. I love it. Okay, man. Good stuff. I'll see you in a few hours. We're hanging out today doing some filming, and I'm excited to have people see what we've been working on because I've been told by a potential PR partner not to scoop ourselves, and so I need to be very cautious of what I say on this podcast and on my LinkedIn to make sure that I'm not saying things before the official channels say things. But man, we've been doing some behind the scenes filming about the process of making Brotherhood, and I'm very excited for those to come out.
Yeah. Yeah. No scoops. All good review stuff, though.
There you go. All right, man. Thanks a ton. See you next time.
Okay. Thanks for joining us. If you are enjoying Truly Independent, please share and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of the journey. Today's episode was edited by Michael Bradford and produced by 3 Coin Productions. This season of Truly Independent is supported by the Help Them See Foundation. Help Them See is a nonprofit dedicated to supporting feature films that inspire faith, hope, and connection. By partnering with filmmakers, the Help Them See Foundation brings meaningful stories to life and shares them with audiences worldwide, making a lasting cultural impact through the power of cinema. Learn more and discover how you can be part of the movement by visiting helpthemseefoundation.org.